Welcome to our senior secondary biology. In this video, we're going to take a look at two subtopics. The first one is cell organization and the other one is transport across the cell membrane. Let's get started. So at the end of this video, I expect you to be able to describe cell organization. I also expect you to be able to define three processes that are involved in the transportation across cell membrane. I expect you to be able to explain the effect of osmosis on cells. So there is a process we're going to learn called osmosis. I expect you to explain the effects of this process on cells. I also expect you to be able to describe the importance of the three processes that we're going to learn, which are involved with transportation of substances across the cell membrane. So we're going to start with cell organization, then we'll move to transportation across the cell membrane. Cell organization is about how cells are organized from a living organism. We have discussed cells and we know that they are basic functional block or unit of living organisms. But cells are made of small structures such as the mitochondria, the nucleus, and the cell membrane. These small structures that perform different functions are called organelles, and ultimately gives a cell its function. An example of a cell is a red blood cell. A group of cells that are near each other and perform similar function makes up what is known as a tissue. Examples of tissues in plants include the phloem tissue, the xylem tissue, and in animals include blood or muscle tissues. So if we look at blood, it is made up of a lot of red blood cells. A group of tissues that perform different functions but ultimately carries one objective makes up what is known as an organ. Examples of organs include the brain, the liver, and the heart. If we look at the heart, it is made up of more than one tissue. An example of a tissue that makes up the heart is connective tissues. So connective tissues connects one part of the heart to the other. Then the other type of tissue that makes up the heart are what we call muscle tissues, the ones that are made up of muscle cells. So for the heart to pump blood, the muscle tissues have to contract and relax. A group of organs that perform different functions but ultimately carries a similar objective or a common objective makes up what is called a system. Examples of system in plants include the transport system. Then in animals we've got nervous system, respiratory system, and blood circulation system. A group of systems makes up an organism. For example, an organism, a living organism, is a human being. And human beings are made of different systems, such as the system that controls our breathing, which is the respiratory system, or the system that deals with the movement of blood, which is the transport system, or the system that is involved in sensing what is happening in our environment, called the nervous system. So this is how cells are organized. So transport across the cell membrane. How do substances move across the cell membrane? They do this by three main processes. The first is diffusion, the second is osmosis, and the third is active transport. We're going to study all these processes, but we're not going to deal with active transport in details. We'll deal with it in the next video. So let's start with diffusion. What is diffusion? Diffusion is defined as the process by which molecules move from a region where they are high in concentration to a region where they are low in concentration. The good example you can use to understand diffusion is the spraying of perfume. If you spray perfume on your body, the particles of perfume will move from where you've sprayed, because they are highly concentrated, to other parts of the room, such as the corners of the room where they are low in concentration. The job or the goal of nature is to attain what is called the equilibrium or equalness. So nature strives to make sure that concentration in two regions that are neighboring is equal. There is a concept of concentration gradient, which is defined as the difference in concentration between two regions. You can picture it like this. One side we've got molecules in high concentration, the other side we've got molecules in low concentration. So the job of nature is to make sure that the concentration are equal. So some molecules will move from where they're highly concentrated to where they are low in concentration till the concentrations are equal. The point when the concentration are equal is called an equilibrium. And when molecules move from high concentration to low concentration, we say they have moved down a concentration gradient. So diffusion can be defined using the word concentration gradient as the movement of molecules down a concentration gradient. What are some of the factors that affect the rate of diffusion? The rate of diffusion is how fast particles or molecules diffuse or move from one area to another. The first factor is temperature. The higher the temperature, the higher the rate of diffusion. So when it's hot, molecules move faster than when it's cold. The other factor is concentration gradient. So concentration gradient is defined as the difference in concentration between two regions, like I've defined before. So if the difference in concentration between two regions is high, then particles will move faster. So we can say the higher the concentration gradient, the higher the rate of diffusion. Another factor is molecule size. Smaller molecules move faster than bigger molecules. Because of this, the smaller the molecule, the greater the rate of diffusion. Another factor is surface area of the diffusing surface. So if the surface area of the surface on which diffusion is happening is big, then more molecules are going to diffuse. And we can say the greater the surface area, the greater the rate of diffusion. What is the importance of diffusion in living things? So how does diffusion of molecules across the cell membrane helps in living things? The first is it facilitates gaseous movement in and out of living organisms. For the process of breathing to occur in animals or respiration in plants, there is diffusion involved for the gases to move inside and outside the cells. The other importance is it facilitates nutrients movement into living cells. So when you eat, and once the nutrients in your food, in the food you have eaten, are absorbed, how do they get into cells? It's through the process of diffusion. It also facilitates movement of water molecules in and outside living cells. Diffusion finally facilitates movement of toxic waste outside living cells. So once you eat and your nutrients are inside the cells and they are used, the end product are poisonous or toxic. They have to be removed outside the cells. These toxic wastes are removed to the outside of the cells through the process of diffusion. The other mode of transport across the cell membrane is osmosis, which is defined as the diffusion of water molecules across a selective permeable membrane. So we are from looking at diffusion, and because we understand what diffusion means, so osmosis can be defined as the movement of water molecules across a selective permeable membrane from a region where they are highly concentrated to a region where they are low in concentration. Another definition for osmosis is the movement of water molecules from a region of high water potential to low water potential across a selective permeable membrane. So the main difference between diffusion and osmosis is osmosis involves water only, and also it has to do with the movement across a selective permeable membrane. Remember, a selective permeable membrane chooses what passes through it. Then this other definition that I've just indicated here has got the word water potential. Let me just read it again. Osmosis is the movement of water molecules from a region of high water potential to low water potential across a selective permeable membrane. So the question is, what is water potential? Water potential is defined as the capacity of water to move from one solution to another.
So if you have got two different solutions which are separated by a selective permeable membrane, one solution has got a high capacity of water to move from it to the other. How do you tell? It's about concentration. So a solution that has got high concentration of water means it has got high water potential and therefore it can move, because diffusion is the movement of molecules from high concentration to low concentration. So a solution with high water potential or that has got high concentration of water will lose water, or the water in it is going to move into the other solution which has got a lower concentration of water till there is equal concentration or the equilibrium point is reached. So to understand that, let's analyze this tube here. So on our left, we've got a solution which is 10% sucrose solution, and on our right, we've got 20% sucrose solution. And in between, just below, there is a partially permeable membrane which is separating the two. This means it only allows water, it doesn't allow sucrose to pass through it. So where is the water going to move to? Is it going to move from left to right or from right to left? The only way we can tell is about concentration. So we'll ask ourselves which solution has got a high concentration of water. So if we look at the 10% sucrose solution, it has got 10% sucrose, which means the remaining 90% is water. And on our right, we've got 20% sucrose solution, which means the remaining 80% is water. So the solution on the left has got high water potential as compared to the solution on the right. And therefore, water is going to move from left to right. The end result will be something like this. So at this point, it means we've got equal concentration on the left and right. And by concentration, I mean water concentration. So always remember that whenever we're talking about osmosis, whenever we're talking about particles moving across a partially or a selective permeable membrane, we concentrate on the movement of water, not other particles. When we were, I remember the first time I saw a question like this, I was confused because I remember that I had studied about concentration, and osmosis was the movement from high concentration to lower concentration. So I could think that the water is going to move from 20% sucrose solution to 10% sucrose solution, because 20% sucrose solution is higher than 10% sucrose solution, but that's not true. 20% sucrose solution has got a lower concentration of water, which is 80%, as compared to the 10% sucrose solution, which has got 90% of water. There is one solution which is called diluted water. So diluted water has got the highest water potential. Why is it so? Because it doesn't have impurities. Therefore, water concentration is always 100. So when you have got two solutions, one being a diluted solution and the other one being another solution, water always move from a diluted solution to another solution. Of course, if the two solutions are separated by a selective or a partially permeable membrane. Now that we understand what osmosis is, what are the effects of osmosis in plant cells? What happens when you put a plant cell inside water which has got, let's say, high water potential than the inside of the cell, or lower water potential than the inside of the cell? So if you put a plant cell in a solution that has got a high water potential than the inside of the cell, what happens is the water in the solution, because of the high water potential, is going to move inside the cell. Remember, the vacuum is responsible for storing water. So the water is going to move into the vacuum. The result is the vacuum will get swollen. As the water keeps on moving, it will keep on expanding. At the end of the day, it will be pushing the cell membrane against the cell. But cells are rigid and firm. So the cell is going to be pushing back the cell membrane. At the end of the day, we're going to have a plant cell that appears like this. So the vacuum is pushing the cell membrane is pushing the cell, and the cell is pushing back. A cell in such state is termed to be turgid, and the pressure that the vacuum and the cell membrane apply to the cell is called target pressure. We're going to see the beauty of target pressure just in a few seconds. What happens when a plant cell is put in a solution with lower water potential? Because of low water potential, which means the concentration of water in that solution is lower than the inside of the cell, the water inside the cell will move out to the outside solution. Once that happens, the vacuole is going to shrink, and the cell membrane is also going to shrink and detach from the cell. So it will appear like this. A cell in this state is said to be plasmolysed. So whenever you see plants like this, like on the left, which is withered, and the one on the the one on the left has lost water. So the cell membrane and the vacuole has shrinked. That's why it is appearing like this. Well, on B, it has gained water. So there's target pressure, which is the pressure that comes about by that water that the cells have absorbed or that have taken from the outside environment. What about animal cells? What happens to animal cells when we put them in a solution of high water potential and in a solution with lower water potential? So in a solution with high water potential, as usual, water is going to move inside the cell. Once that happens, the cell will swell. As the water keeps on moving and the cell keeps on swelling till it will burst, like this. When this happens, the cell is said to have undergone cytolysis. What if you put an animal cell in a solution with lower water potential? So with lower water potential, which means the concentration of water inside the cell is higher than outside the cell. So the water will move from the inside of the cell to the outside of the cell, resulting in the cell shrinking like this. A cell in this state is said to have undergone crenation. So these are the effects of osmosis in plant cells and animal cells. So the last mode of transport across the cell membrane is called active transport. It is defined as the movement of substances against a concentration gradient using energy from ATP. So this part which says against a concentration gradient, what it means is moving from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration. Diffusion and osmosis involves moving from high concentration to a region of low concentration so that there is equalness. But active transport, the movement is from low concentration to high concentration. That doesn't happen naturally. You need energy to push for molecules to move from a region where they are low in concentration to a region where they are high in concentration. That's where the ATP comes from. So in the next video, we're going to learn more about the ATP, but in this video, I'm going to just introduce it. And the introduction is just this, where I show you that for active transport to happen, ATP is involved. There is energy that is involved that is gotten from ATP. We're going to finalize this video with examples of situation or of movements across the cell membrane that involves active transport. The first is absorption of dissolved mineral salts by root hairs. So dissolving of mineral salts by root hairs doesn't happen by diffusion or osmosis. It is active transport. Also, glucose uptake by cells in the villi, in the small intestines. So in the small intestines, there are structures called villi, which take glucose from the food we eat. And the process happens by active transport. This marks the end of this video. Check out for more details about active transport in the next video. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Otherwise, happy solving.